Hey everyone, I'm here at East Denver and I'm here with Pavel. He is a founder and a builder in the DAOs space. So we're going to pick his brain about all things DAO. And if you're in a DAO, if you're curious about DAOs, if you're building some DAO tooling, you're going to want to hear this interview today. And without further ado, let's just jump right in. Pavel, in your view, what is the state of DAOs in 2023? And you can go whatever direction you want with that question.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. So I think there are a lot of DAOs in terms of structure, in terms of implementation. So there's different DAOs like investment DAOs. I think syndicate DAOs working on that. There's also DAOs that run different types of variety of consulting services. So like Bakeless DAO and then Aragon DAO has their own like consulting branch as well. So there's DAOs are starting to expand into more of varieties of niches, but also are planning to take things into like serious business mode. So a lot of the I think like established DAOs, MakerDAO, Compound, Uniswap, they're also having like their own type of and Aave as well. They have their own type of risk management framework. So a lot of DAOs are also starting to contract out work and work on other areas as well. So I'm thinking that as a part of the state of the DAO space, DAOs are starting to become more mature structural entities that are there to do serious business and expanding like the ecosystem through their own niches.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. It does sound like there's a lot more traction, adoption, and maturity in the DAO space compared to like 5 years ago when we already knew about DAOs, right? But I want to go to the problems and hurdles facing DAOs. Can you share with me what are the biggest problems and hurdles facing DAOs in general in your view?
Absolutely. So I think that with the growth of institutional frameworks, with different types of DAO structures, right? DAOs are getting more serious. Everyone is getting a bit of a more serious role. Now there are still like less serious DAOs that are out there, but more than like a lot of them that are present within the space have this type of like, okay, we have a big treasury, we need to manage it effectively. So how do we do that? And how do we like continue the vision and goals of continue to expand what our ethos is and continue to provide value to potential like token holders or investors or people that are just wanting to contribute to the DAO space? So I think that, I guess the different types of limitations on different DAOs would be how they support a lot of interactions between different people, right? Like it's decentralized, right? I can spin it up very easily, but it's very difficult for me to maintain that same level of reliability, especially with the whole entire DAO community, right? So I have a lot of token holders, for example, but how do I engage in them? How do I get them to participate in them? So I need like segments of them that can do different types of work or different types of activities for the DAO, and then I need structures to pay and facilitate these payments for people that are working for these DAOs. And then there's also different types of DAOs that work with other DAOs. So the facilitation between that space, I think that it's still growing, right? People see that DAOs now have a lot of treasury. So they have treasury, they have assets, they're there to maintain their own DAO. But there's not a lot of structures that facilitate the business interactions between other DAOs, essentially facilitating the Web3 economy. Right now, it's DeFi as the backbone, and sort of a lot of established DAOs are operating as that DeFi backend, MakerDAO, Compound, Uniswap, Aave. But then there's not a lot of DAOs that operate as in just work-based operations and maybe consulting services. So they're still growing, and I think that's where a little bit of the limitations is that there's not really an infrastructure to facilitate these work-based operations within the DAO space.
That's really interesting, and maybe the answer to my next question will be like better infrastructure, but I want to pick your brain. One big criticism of DAOs is that they have a lot of token holders, right? Governance token holders. But when there's a big vote coming up, many times barely anyone is like participating. What are your thoughts on that? How to improve that drastically in the future?
I like that point. because I think that in a DAO, you have, people that buy the token as number go up. And they're just, I'm here to secure my investment. And voter apathy is something huge. It's what even countries are facing on every election cycle. And some countries, I think Australia even has a fine if you don't vote. But I don't think that there should be any system should have these types of mandatory systems where it's just like anybody that buys a token has to vote, or otherwise it's not natural in terms of how the DAO should operate. What I think would be a better solution would be to take that governance arm, right? To take that, like, okay, so it's governance, you have maybe delegates, you have maybe people that do the maybe day-to-day DAO tasks.
Right.
But then there are other parts where you can create sub-organizations or sub-DAOs that do its own activity and just have people that want to be involved in that one activity. So for example, if I'm a content creator, if I'm coming here and I want to do a podcast, right? I might join, for example, Bakeless because I saw David Hoffman and I'm like, I want to join as a content contributor. So maybe there's another branch that I could be more impactful to. And in that way, I think that people still can contribute to the DAO. It can still be a part of the DAO. Maybe, I have some of the tokens, whatnot, but contribute in a different way. And that way their interest is still stimulated. It's not like, oh, I hate reading governance proposals, I don't want to vote. But they can do other things within the DAO that still has that impact towards the day-to-day, business. And I think that structures that facilitate this type of interactions, not just like, it's mandatory to vote, you have to do your chores to be a part of this. I think if you facilitate this free movements in terms of, I want to create my own type of DAO that's a part of this DAO and sort of build my own vision, I think facilitating that interaction is essential for maintaining that voter engagement as well as like participation within the ecosystem.
That's really interesting. That's not something I've kind of thought about, so thank you for sharing that. Just in terms of like pure high-level governance voting, though, another problem that I've seen from a more like maybe medium-level onlooker per se is like the whales controlling the votes. What are your thoughts on that?
So I have mixed feelings, right? On one hand, the whales do provide capital for the DAO. But at the same time, it also depends, because I'm also raising as well. So, VCs are very important. And it's kind of like the right type of whale that comes in. If it's a whale that comes in to just extract value, to see number go up and then dump immediately, then that's not good for anyone. And I think that especially we've seen very recently with like A16Z, for example, in the Uniswap,
exactly,
how like different decisions can be swayed because of these whales that control a lot of the votes. And I think that it's the people, the investors that come in and have that impact. I think that it's it provides value to that aspect where like they can contribute in that way. But I also think that there should be a way that for example, quadratic voting, where like more of the community can come in and let's say they have their own smaller voice, but I think throughout that has more of an impact, because it's not the whales themselves that are doing the day-to-day operations. It's not the whales that are doing the work. They are providing the capital for that ability to do the work, but it's also the people that contribute most in those ecosystems that I think should have more of a say. So quadratic voting is one of the models that we're using for the Metis ecosystem, for the community ecosystem governance. But I think that there's one step above that can be used, where it's reputation-based. So the more active I am in the community, the more voice that I potentially can have. And I mean, of course, investors, token holders should also have a voice, but they also should have that ability to, provide work opportunities within the space. So the token holders should continue to provide value the same way that people that are in the day-to-day, that do the day-to-day operations. And I think that those two aspects are critical. Because if it's just something that's well funded or just very, very heavily VC backed, community doesn't want to go towards that. Community wants to go to more of things that they can have an impact in and they can sway the decisions in. And so I think that having that ability to have reputation-based voting on top of a token or whatever type of other voting systems there are, I think that's critical for the continuation of the DAO space.
So that's really interesting about reputation affecting like your vote weight or something. What do you think about like the dual token models or like one type is just one token, one vote, and the other type is like each user gets one vote by like just giving them a soulbound token? Like what are your thoughts about that area?
I think that there are pros and cons of each, right? So it's kind of what is the goal or what are you trying to achieve within the DAO? If you're an investment DAO, for example, maybe you do want it to be so that anybody that contributes should have an equal amount of say towards everyone else that contributes. So I think Moloch DAO is that type of structure where people that invest into Moloch DAO have a corresponding amounts of tokens, non-transferable, that they can use to essentially vote in different proposals to sway where the money would go to. So I think that, for example, an investment DAO, that would be one crucial aspect. But then something that relates to just that soul-bound aspect, where it's one token, one vote, that might be more so of a DAO that's maybe it's more of a DAO that runs like a company, right? Where everyone is on the board of directors, and then essentially everyone has equal weighting within that, and then so essentially it'd be majority vote within that board, and so decisions can be made like that. I think that a mix of both can be also incorporated, where some aspects where for example, I can have a token having that ability to vote. And then also I can have my reputation or like one sold-on token also given to people that contributes enough. And so that's one aspect of what we want to establish is like, how do we continue to incentivize people to come in and contribute to the DAO space without monetary goals, right? And that could be like, you have enough POAPs and then you can have a vote sway the decisions on this different type of DAO. So it's about balancing, user engagement as well as, VC control, as well as the, different types of aspects within the space. So I guess like to sum it all up, I think that there's room for both, and there's also room for a mix of both, maybe hybrid methods to continue community engagements as well as, keep the money flowing.
Got it. That is super fascinating. A lot to think about different structures for DAOs in the future. Staying on the topic of like limitations or hurdles per se, there's this push and pull in terms of keeping things like democratic in a DAO and also being nimble and fast to act if the opportunity or if the situation requires it. What are your thoughts on just that balance in general for DAOs?
I think that it's very important for every DAO to consider like what it wants to be. And so, for example, DAOs that have an underlying or overlying, in this case, a DeFi product, actually underlying DeFi product that they have. So, for example, Compound, Uniswap, MakerDAO, Aave. So they have a DAO. They all have DAOs, and they all have their corresponding tokens that facilitate different types of decision making for the DAO. I think that in those cases, right, they want to operate more democratically. So they are already making essentially passive income on a lot of whatever that their financial products are. So people are using them, people are continuously deriving value from them, and as such, they might have a slower decision-making process, which is fine. It's that essentially is what limits risk.
Right.
And instead of having it be like, oh, we're gonna change it to this. And I think that for those products, I think it's more of like a solved problems to be just democratic and to not be nimble. But then for other DAOs, maybe service-based or product-based DAOs that's have like a core offering, maybe like if you're part of a consulting DAO, then you might want to have more of a change, more of an impact within the changing landscape, because it's based off of people that back the DAO. It's not based on a DeFi protocol. So it's essentially the question is like, what is backing the DAO's engagement? Is it being backed by recurring revenue? In that case, you can run it like democratically, or is it backed by people contributing at a constant basis and people providing value? And in that case, I think that those DAOs that operate as a service or a product, or have like that's need to continuously expand and evolve, I think those should be more nimble, and maybe even structuring it like a traditional DAO, like maybe with a token, might not be the best decision for those types of entities. Maybe just a plain multi-sig, and
interesting. Okay.
and ways to structure membership with that. And we're actually I could tie in like what we're building as well for that. Essentially, we want to facilitate working group model. So Koris is essentially creating a version of a DAO called a DAC, a decentralized autonomous company, essentially facilitating these different types of working groups to be more nimble and agile rather than being more democratic. Of course, you can still have democratic principles in there, but I guess it's not the focus of it to be not changing. The focus is that I'm going to need to change. I'm going to need to adapt. I'm going to need to, break stuff, fix it, change, and continuously improve. And so I need a structure that best fits the need to, break stuff and move on.
Exactly. And I definitely want to ask you more about DAX and Koris in a bit.
Yes.
But first, in terms of DAO use cases, what are your favorite ones for both now and looking forward in the future?
So it depends on the structure. And so I always look at it like for the structure of different use cases. So I see DAOs a lot like they're like functioning governments, where you can just spin it up and you can essentially make decisions, collective decision making with people that are participating. And so I think that really ambitious use cases is potential existing governments maybe can utilize this type of structure and to facilitate maybe this one person, one vote type of way. Where
Interesting, like elections then, straight up elections.
like straight up elections. But I mean, of course you have to convince world governments to continuously do that. So that may be like way out there. But I think that another way is you have, collectives. Investment DAOs are I think the best well-known use case, because that's really, you put money in the pot.
It's simple.
And then and then the DAO invests it. And there's already like investment club structures, for example, in the US. You're able to have like these different types of investment clubs and be able to do these different types of decisions already. And then you can also have a DAO that has that structure with it. I think that in the future, use cases for different DAOs might be more so tied to the regulatory aspect. So I really like what, for example, LexDAO or WorkDAO is doing. So they're facilitating these types of different structures for DAOs to essentially become more regulated, more into the regulated environment. WorkDAO, for example, focuses on that employment. So there's other Web2 based entities, kind of similar to like Deal. Deal essentially makes it so that I can be an employee. I can hire employees from anywhere, and essentially have them be legal employees. Because right now, in all situations for DAOs, everyone works as a contractor.
Right. That makes sense.
Opolis, for example, like has means of employment as well. So they have like ways to structure that and structure employee benefits. And then WorkDAO is also focusing on that type of like employment way, so that I can hire people no matter where they are in the world and still have them be legally able to work for my DAO and be paid and be given like a W-2 or a 1099 is for the contractors. But anyways, so I'm thinking in the space that the future use cases might be more regulatory. And so
Got it.
I can create companies on the blockchain, and I don't need to go through the different types of hurdles where I am locally. I can just spin it up, be legally protected, start participating in that Web3 economy, start deriving value for any type of service in that Web3 economy, and be legally protected as well. So I'm thinking those are future use cases. So I'm really liking like LexDAO and WorkDAO and Opolis and all of these other like regulatory based DAOs that are working towards that goal.
Got it. Thanks for the heads up about those. I'll definitely have to check those out further because I'm not too familiar with them myself. But this is kind of the flip side. What use cases for DAOs are you not a fan of? And are you like, it shouldn't be a DAO, people should stop doing this? There must be some, right?
I think it's not up to me to decide, because that sort of, you see, like I'm always thinking like, all right, so certain maybe NFT projects, right? Like, but at the same time, right, like a lot of what Web3 and communities derive from is just like that ability to collect people towards like a common goal and vision.
Right, exactly.
And sometimes, that vision might lack direction. Maybe there's like ways that you can eventually like, okay, we're going to pool a bunch of capital and then we're going to figure stuff out later on. And yeah, like still Constitution DAO, for example, they had like a specific purpose to buy the US Constitution. They raised like, I think 40 million. Yeah. They weren't successful, but it spun out to be something bigger. So I think that they're continuously they're operating right now, and so they were built on like one ethos, and then they were continuously expanding to a different segment. So I think that in that case, like I would say that any use case is viable to be in the DAO space. Like I'm more for like experimentation. I like the ability for like, for example, for NFT communities to just be created and then for it to run like DAO. So for example, like ApeCoin, for example, and then like you have the Bored Apes where it came from an NFT project, and now it's like now they're sort of starting to build something around their community, and it's kind of like, okay, now I hold a token which allows you to make decisions with that community, and then now they're evolving into a lot of things. Doodles, for example, same type of mechanism where essentially I have doodles, and then I'm able to, and then they're also continuously expanding. They see the need for it, and so they're building out more of a robust product because of it. So they started out as an NFT collection, and then they'll say, oh, there's a ton of community interest, I'm going to start essentially doing more related to that. So I think that the experimentation is what I like, and it's like, even if you don't have a clear idea on what you're doing, as long as you can get a community behind it and continuously maintain it, and then grow, and then have structures to grow it, I think that I'm a fan of all DAOs.
It makes sense. You're a DAO maximalist, perhaps. Speaking of which, your company Koris and DAX, can you give us the elevator pitch for that?
Excellent. Yeah. So for Koris, it is essentially a structure and enterprise resource planning tool designed for working groups for DAOs, essentially trying to make it more transparent on what exactly is the working group doing, and is the project on time, is the project on budget, is the project active? Because current methods of, for example, giving grants funding. For example, there might be a proposal that a DAO gets. So someone submits a proposal, and that proposal gets voted on by the community. And so it's like, yeah, great idea. I'm going to sponsor ETH Denver.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the money is given. And then what happens after that is...
Black hole kind of.
Exactly. So like for that time period, it's essentially you say, I'm going to do this. Here's what I need the money for. Cool, here's the money. And then that's it. And then you likely will get some type of report later on, since it's like, maybe associated with certain identities if they gave that substantial amount of money. And but in this case, I might get a progress report 3 months later when they need more money. And essentially, there isn't a way for me to know how a DAO is operating on the day-to-day, how the DAO members who voted for that proposal, who gave them an allocation, how I'm understanding that, am I getting a return on my investments that I put in for this? So essentially, we're trying to make it a more transparent way to see how the different types of operations that are part of the working group, how that can be more clearly expressed to DAO members so that they know that their investment wasn't just, oh, I'm going to take the money, I'm going to spend it on something, and I'm not going to get any return in terms of KPI.
Yeah, that's like 10x better organization that they get out of using a tool like yours. So I'm curious, what stage are y'all at? Do you have anyone test driving out?
Yeah, so currently we are in a beta waitlist, and it's closed beta waitlist. So we had about 200 DAOs sign up, and we're developing. A lot of our established partners would be Metis, as well as ETSwap, and Ichi as well. So we have other partnerships as well that we're looking to make, and we're currently facilitating a lot of the progressive updates and upgrades related to the feedback that we're receiving. So essentially, we do have that MVP. We do have it launched on testnet, and then we're looking for ways that potentially DAOs would say we need more of this, and then we're constantly getting feedback for that. So I guess as we're constantly onboarding, and we want people to try out and test, we're actually running a grants program to basically say, called the DAO Attribution Campaign, for people to essentially post a proposal on how they would contribute to their existing DAO and receive a micro grants if it gets voted as one of the top participants on the platform. And so we're actually demoing our own platform, because you can post your proposal and then get the community to vote for it.
Oh, awesome.
Directly on what we have. And for civil protection, we're actually, in order to do this, you have to be part of like the Metis Discord. So you have to join the Metis Discord, and then you have to join the DAC, and then you can vote. So that removes like the potential for like people to just recreate accounts.
Right, exactly.
You need like a phone number and a Discord account, and there's tons of bot protection. But you can add in, like, similar to how Collabland and I think Guild also operates, is that you can add restrictions based on what you want your membership criteria for the decentralized autonomous companies to have. So that's, I guess, like, that's the stage that we're in, and we're definitely looking for more feedback and seeing how DAOs would use it. But how we see it being used is more for those working group structures where you want to be transparently see what exactly is being done for these different types of proposals that are being made.
Yeah, and I had a chance to watch your kind of demo play at your booth earlier, and that was really cool. So personally, I can't wait to see how DAOs adopt your tool and hopefully get a lot more organized and just more productive, more growth for them towards their own goal by having everything like visibility into everything taken care of for them. So you've mentioned Metis, which a lot of my viewers actually know, layer 2 blockchain ecosystem and whatnot. Just final thoughts. I just wanted to ask, what is your experience like being incubated in the Metis ecosystem? How do you like it? general thoughts.
Yeah. So I worked as the integrations lead for Metis for like, almost like a year and a half. So that was a big journey. Essentially, I was the main technical person as well as running also like certain biz dev operations. So I was guiding projects through like, hey, so here's our technical implementation. Here's what you need. Here's the RPCs. So a lot of that is me just talking to different communities, Web3 based builders, DAOs, and see how we can help and how we can get them integrated onto the Metis ecosystem. So what I found is that working with Metis was a tremendous, like a really good experience because it showed me how there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, and there's a lot of projects that are doing it. So there are a lot of projects in the ecosystem, and even like going into ETH Denver, that I can see like there's a lot of projects they're building and trying to make something better, and I think that it's a very good experience working for Metis, and I think that they've been tremendously supportive on Koris, on the application, and we're actually going to do something more long term with that, using DACs to run what we call eco nodes. So eco nodes are like these structures that essentially are present within the Metis ecosystem, and then you're able to have ways that each eco node operates independently, but all part of the same ecosystem, and they all have more of a voice on how the direction should go, on where the how the chain should operate, how everything should be done, and yeah, we are constantly revising like the mechanics and ways that's structuring, for example, reputation based and then token based, as well as giving a lot of thought and consideration with that. But I'm glad to be part of the Metis ecosystem to help add on my view on how a lot of these processes should run and have more of a voice to community participants.
Yeah, it sounds like a great place to incubate your project and get a lot of early users in the Metis ecosystem. And for Metis itself, are we going to be able to use your tool and the concept of DAX outside as well, outside of Metis?
Yes. So eventually we will have, because we are EVM based, so a lot of the contracts can be deployed on other ecosystems as well. Right now, we see that for the long term, it's great working with Metis. So they've been tremendously supportive, and yeah, they are essentially providing us tools and resources that we can use to grow, and but we will have different applications on different chains as well. So we're not saying that we're only on Metis, but they have provided, for example, functionality like BLS wallets. BLS wallets allows gasless transactions to happen, so you don't need to have, for example, Metis tokens in order to join a DAC. Whereas, and then like when we can support other essentially chains to support that application, like BLS and all the other infrastructure that we're using, then we plan to move on and expand this there. Likely during our mainnet release.
Got it.
It will happen later this year.
Yeah, it sounds like exciting year for Koris and your launch and growth. So very excited. We'll definitely be following what y'all do. But I think that's pretty much it in terms of questions I wanted to pick your brains on. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap it up?
So I guess the DAO space, right? It's expanding. It's new. It's still early. And so I think that's for any listeners or viewers that I would suggest, just if you're in the space, if you're like just learning or just diving a bit like service level, just type in DAO and see what comes up, because I think that whatever your idea, it can be created using that community aspect, community building approach. And there's many different types of structures that are currently being developed that might be suited for any versions of community as well. So I think that, I guess final thoughts is that, don't think that, maybe an idea, it might just be an idea, but there might be a structure that can help facilitate and grow more of that idea into something that everyone knows about and everyone can participate in. So that inclusivity is I think what really grows a lot of the community and outreach as well. So that's what I would recommend. If you don't know about DAOs, just go in and start saying like, hey, I'm part of X DAO or something. and then see what comes out of it.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, Pavel. And I will drop your links to your Twitter, your company website in the description that y'all should go check out.